So, the Vuelta a España 2024 has come to an end with Primož Roglič as its overall winner, his 4th Vuelta and the first one for his new team, Red Bull-Bora-Hansgrohe. Just like I do for every single Grand Tour, the Giro, the Tour and the Vuelta, I will be doing a tier list for the teams at this race. Basically going over every team that raced this Vuelta, rating their performance from S tier, the best of the best, to DNS, they might as well have not started. Anyway, let's kick it off with maybe the most surprising performance of this entire Vuelta, Kern Pharma. Going back to before the Vuelta started, Kern Pharma had only one victory this season, a stage at a 2.2 French race. But they did show promise in the run-in towards La Vuelta, getting 4th and 7th with Berade and Castrillo at the Vuelta a Burgos. That's against proper World Tour competition. So when the Vuelta started, I was expecting maybe one stage victory, but this team certainly overperformed. In the end, not just one victory, but 3. 2 with Castrillo, stage 12 and 15. 15 was amazing, by the way, on Quito Negro. And next to that, Berade winning stage 18 after a pretty strong teamwork performance in the breakaway. And next to these stage wins, getting a top 20 in GC with Jose Felix Parra. And next to that, getting 4 times a top 5 in the sprint with Paul Miquel. This team was good across the board. So yeah, it's quite simple really. They massively overperformed. Easily an S tier performance. So there we go, we're starting off with a team at the top of our ranking. And that brings us to the other side of the ranking, Euskaltel-Euskadi. Unlike Kern Pharma, they were only present in those sprint stage breakaways, the exposure breakaways, and never in the winning breakaways. And we often saw them in the peloton desperately trying to get into a breakaway that had already established. And surprise, surprise, they were stuck in a chasse patate behind it. That being said, they did get one podium in a sprint stage with Aberasturi, so that's worth something. In the end, a pretty bad Vuelta for Euskaltel, not deserving of a wildcard in my opinion. I'll drop them in tier D where they belong. Anyway, on to the French teams. Let's start off with Arkea B&B Hotels. There's honestly not too much to say. Christian Rodriguez got a top 15 in GC, I think 13th in the end, but outside of that, they weren't very present in breakaways. Every now and then Guglielmi or Gernalek would be in there, but not in a competitive breakaway. I doubted a lot between D tier and DNS, but I'm gonna give them D just because of Christian Rodriguez. The next French team, Cofidis, is a pretty similar situation. Top 15 with Guillaume Martin, but in the breakaways, not successful. A lot of the time, not even in the breakaways to begin with. For some reason, I do hold Cofidis at a higher standard as Arkea, so I'm gonna drop Cofidis in DNS, our first team at the bottom of the ranking. They might as well have not been here. Now Groupama FDJ, that's a different story. That's a team that did perform. Stefan Kung finally won his Grand Tour stage on the final time trial of this Vuelta. And next to that, we witnessed the resurrection of David Gaudu, the French Messiah. But he still can't TT, losing his top 5 on the final day. But hey, it was good to see Gaudu at the level he was at, getting 2nd on Moncalvillo behind Roglic, getting 6th in GC in the end. That's a good performance. But if Gaudu had sustained that top 5, I would have given them A tier. Because he lost that top 5, I have to give them B tier in the end. Now one thing is certain, our last French team, Decathlon AG2R, definitely overperformed. Ben O'Connor winning stage 6 after a majestic solo, taking the red jersey and defending that all the way up to stage 19 Moncalvillo. I'll be honest, I think this would have been a very different race in terms of entertainment if O'Connor didn't get that red jersey. Because the 5-minute lead he had on Primož Roglič didn't necessarily endanger Roglic's chances of winning, but it did make it that Roglic had to go from earlier on the big climbs. But it certainly became a problem for the other podium competitors because O'Connor finishes 2nd in this Grand Tour after getting 4th at the Giro. It cannot be understated how amazing Ben O'Connor's season is, getting 4th at the Giro, 2nd at La Vuelta, while he's arguably not even a top 10 climber in the world. That is called maximizing your chances of victory. That is called going after it, daring to try something that might not work, but it paid off in this Vuelta. An overperformance for Decathlon and for O'Connor. That is an S tier performance, together with Kern Pharma at the top of the leaderboards. Anyway, next up, Astana Kazakhstan. I gotta be honest, a bit less positive, getting 16th in GC with Fortunato. I'm sorry, but that's a result where I don't care about 16th. I did like seeing Tejada go in the breakaway a few times, almost winning stage 8 from the breakaway, being the last leftover rider, but the GC riders took him. But in the end, Astana got basically nothing out of this race, so I'm gonna have to give them a D tier performance. Now let's talk Israel Premier Tech. Got in the breakaway a few times, finally got woods in the breakaway on stage 13, Puerto de Ancaras, and he won that stage. Next to that, Marco Frigo Riccitello, all active in the breakaways, but no other stage win. Meanwhile, George Bennett tried to go for a top 10 in GC, but that didn't work out. But I think this team deserves that B rating because of that Michael Woods victory. Another team with a single stage win is DSM Firmenich PostNL with Pavel Bittner winning a sprint. sprint. Meanwhile, Max Poole endlessly tried to win a stage from the breakaway and he grabbed next to it no stage wins, which is devastating. Anyway, a B tier rating for DSM-Firmenich. Our next team to rate is Visma Lease Bike, and this is where it gets complicated. I think we can start off by saying Wout van Aert's Vuelta was great. Starting off with wearing the red jersey for 2 days, winning 3 stages, stage 3, 7 and 10. Next to that, he easily locked up the green jersey. Next to that, was virtually in the lead of the KOM jersey, and then he crashed out. Like, fortunately, it doesn't happen often that someone in a distinctive jersey in a race ends up crashing out. But to see all the hard work Wout van Aert has put in, and then that green jersey evaporates, that virtual KOM jersey evaporates, after such an amazing Wout van Aert. It wasn't 2022 Tour de France Wout van Aert, but it was as close as it gets. Honestly, truly heartbreaking. Wout van Aert by himself, easily ST rating in this race. Next to that, Edoardo Affini, wonderful domestique, always there when the team needs him. But I have to say, the rest of Visma Lab in this race was not good. Sepp Kuss, after winning this race last year, no top 10 at the Vuelta this year. He couldn't even get in a breakaway to be able to move up in GC in the first place. Attila Valter, almost invisible. Steven Kruijswijk, almost invisible. Robert Geesing, love his career, almost invisible. Same for Kian Uiterbrooks, but he did have COVID, so that's a potential excuse. So yeah, there's 2 parts in this team. Wout van Aert and Edoardo Affini deserve an S tier performance, the rest of the team truly doesn't. So yeah, that's what I'll do. Wout van Aert and Edoardo Affini show up in the S tier of our ranking, and Visma Lab, the rest of the team, I'm sorry, but D tier performance. And I also have a hard time rating the next team, Alpecin-Deceuninck. Yes, they won 3 stages, stage 2, 4 and 16. Yes, they eventually won the green jersey with Caden Groves, but reality is that's only because Wout van Aert crashed out. If you look solely at the results, the 3 stage wins, the green jersey, you'd say easily S tier. But I can't look past the fact that it required Wout van Aert to crash out for Groves to win green, so for that reason, it's A tier for me. I'd love to hear your take on that. With our next team, I'll keep it fairly simple. Evocation Easy Post gets 4th at this Vuelta with Richard Carapaz, and I gotta be honest, they're just missing out on the podium, but I absolutely love their racing style. So attacking. The third last climb on the Hazalana stage, Carapaz is attacking, satellite riders up ahead. That is crazy. Was it stage 18, the stage Berade won, where they attacked on a climb in the middle of the stage, 45-50 kilometers to go, put Landa in trouble. So much fun to see EF ride like this, to see Carapaz ride like this, but I have to judge them on results, not only on racing style, so it's kind of a B tier performance for me. Basically what I expected from the team. Now let's investigate the curious case of Intermarché Wanty, because this was not a good Vuelta for them, getting 2 top 5s in sprint stages, and outside of that, no clue what they did. I felt like they weren't really present in this race, and there's only one rating I can give to that. DNS, they might as well have not started. Next up, Little Trek definitely had a better race, with Skjelmose getting top 5 in GC, and the white jersey over Lipovic and Rodriguez. That's an amazing result. We knew before this race that Skjelmose could do GC in 1 week races, but he struggled in Grand Tours, and now we have that confirmation that he can do that in Grand Tours as well. Anyway, outside of the mountain stages, Vatse got second twice, I think, on the time trial, the first one, and on stage 7 in a sprint behind Wout van Aert. Maybe I'm slightly underrating them, but I wanted a stage win from them to put them on A tier, so I'll put them on B tier. I think that's an okay spot for them to be. Anyway, we're past the halfway point with it. Most of the teams, we have 2 teams at the top together with 2 riders, a bit odd, but hey, that's our leaderboards at the moment. But before we get to the last 7 teams, let's talk about today's sponsor, Sirocco. Simply said, Sirocco offers you quality kit for an affordable price. I've been using their cycling jerseys and bib shorts for a year and a half now, and I've had 0 issues, and it's super comfortable. And once again, it's definitely affordable. Next to that, they brought out these K4 sports glasses, and I love them, especially the gravel version with like the sandy color. I love this one. Or this one if I want to look a bit more badass during my ride. Anyway, there's a link in the description of this video to get 10% off any Sirocco product, so go in there and take a look. Anyway, on to the next team, Lotto Destiny. I feel like my memories when it comes to Lotto Destiny come from week 1 of this Grand Tour. Lennart van Eetveld nearly beating Primoz Roglic on Pico Veerkast, basically the first mountaintop finish, but he celebrated too early. Would that have changed the result? I don't know, but he would have had a better chance of winning. Next to that, I guess Monique wore the KOM jersey for a few days, and Kampenaerts tried a few times to win a stage, but they were kind of not super present outside of Van Eetveld in week 1. And in the end, because Van Eetveld abandoned, they didn't get anything out of this race really. So I'm afraid C tier it is for Lotto Destiny for me. T-Rex Quickstep is also a tale of two stories. We've got Landa doing very well in GC for the first 2 weeks, and then it all crumbles down on stage 18. Eventually Landa doesn't top 5, but he top 10s instead. I gotta be honest, I do like his racing style, very attacking, but in the end, they only get a top 10 out of this, so I have to go with C tier for T-Rex Quickstep. Now, Ineos Grenadiers wasn't much better. Rodriguez tried to go for a top 5 in GC, didn't end up happening, just about managed to top 10 in the end because he also had a bad day in the last week. Starling lost the first time trial, Narvaez tried a few times in breakaway, but couldn't manage because he wasn't good enough this race. D-tier performance for Ineos in my opinion because I just expect more from this team. On to the third last team then, UAE Team Emirates. They started off this race with Joao Almeida as second favorite in this race, to be honest. But that turned to shit pretty quickly. Almeida had to abandon the race with COVID. Adam Yates fell out of GC very early. Sivakov kind of stuck around, ended up in the top 10 in GC in the end, so that's a good result for him. Now, despite the bad luck in GC, they did do well from day one when it comes to stage wins. Brandon McNulty winning that first stage, getting the red jersey among his shoulders for a day. Next to that, stage 16 with Marc Soler, and stage 9 with Adam Yates. Of course, what a stage that was. Going on a massive raid in the breakaway with multiple teammates. That was lovely to see. And hey, it wouldn't be a Vuelta without some in-house competition within a team, so Marc Soler and Jay Vine both going for the KOM jersey. In the end, they gave it to each other every other day. Jay Vine wins it in the end ahead of Marc Soler. They got a KOM jersey and 3 stage wins. That's a proper consolation prize. I think it's possible to argue that it should be B tier because Almeida had high GC hopes before the race, but he ended up going out with COVID, so I can't really blame them for that either. So I'll go for an A tier rating when it comes to UAE Team Emirates because their results were pretty good. Movistar is also a bit of an odd one because when it comes to Enric Mas, you'd hope that his goal is to podium La Vuelta, and they managed to do that. They get third with Enric Mas, but outside of that, Lascano, disappointing. Pelayo Sanchez, disappointing. I'd say Carlos Canal performed pretty well, so props to him, but outside of Mas, the team was kind of invisible. So yeah, combining third in the race with no stage victories and no real presence outside of Mas, I'll have to go with B tier rating for Movistar. Because a podium is kind of what you'd hope for when it comes to Mas at a Vuelta. And that brings me to the last team on my list, Red Bull-Bora-Hansgrohe, the team of the winner, Primoz Roglic. Like, let's start off simple. First of all, Primoz won La Vuelta. That's great. Getting 3 stage wins, stage 4, 8 and 19, that's amazing. When it comes to the team around him, Florian Lipovic getting second in the white jersey classification and also being able to sustain a top 10 GC position by himself. This means that Primoz was never in so much trouble that they had to offer up Lipovic's white jersey chances and top 10 position to keep Primoz afloat. I do think we saw the two sides of Primoz. First of all, when it comes to Unipuerto stage, flat parkour and a climb at the end, Peloton walks up to the last climb, and on the last climb, Primoz smashes it. Primoz is unbeatable at this Vuelta. But on the harder stages with higher energy expenditure, he struggled every now and then. But hey, that's fine if you can win a Grand Tour with 2 minutes on the others. Did they mess up a few times tactically? Yeah. Did they have everything under control every single day? Not really. But they played to Primoz's strengths in week 3 and they won the Vuelta comfortably. Sure, one could argue that this team deserves an A tier performance, not an S tier, because Primoz was the favorite and they just made it work, but it's not that simple to win a Grand Tour, especially when it's the first year with that leader in your team. It's their first Grand Tour victory together and maybe not their last. So in the end, Red Bull-Bora-Hansgrohe S tier rating for me in my leaderboards. And that means this is the final product of today's video. These are the ratings I've given every single team, and most importantly, what is your opinion on this? I want your opinion in the comment section below. I want to hear your take on every single team. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching my last Grand Tour tier list of 2024. Can't wait to do this again in 2025. See you there. Goodbye. So I'm editing this video and I've noticed that I forgot to actually rate Bahrain victorious, but I guess that just shows how invisible they were in the race itself. So I'm sorry, but the end as it is.